Texas just had about as big of a day as you can have as a football team in April without any games being played. When we're just talking pure recruitment, absolutely massive, adding two big commits. First was Xavier Griffin, not Xavier Griffin. Tyler Atkinson committed earlier in the day around noonish. I think it was on Pat McAfee, actually. Not too surprised by that one. It seemed like 2-3 days ago it started trending definitely towards Texas, and we'll kind of get into what Tyler Atkinson's bringing to Texas and the Longhorn defense. Very excited for him. I think that was a massive get when it happened, but wasn't so exciting because he was crystal balled. So when it ultimately happened on Pat McAfee, I didn't watch it live. I was just refreshing Hayes Fawcett's Twitter, and that's where I kind of got that knowledge that he had committed to Texas officially. Tyler Atkins, hell of a football player. We'll talk about him a bit later, but we're going to start off with James Johnson. Massive get. I can't believe that this dude flipped because he just committed to Georgia 2 weeks ago. And when I do these commitment videos now, watching the junior year film, I really don't mind talking about their recruitment and where they committed, just because you don't really see a kid commit in April just to flip in July, or you don't see a dude commit in June just to flip later in August. Usually you'll start talking about the flips when we get into the actual football season and games are getting played, and some teams are underperforming, some teams overperforming. That's when you kind of get a bit more of the Hollywood flips, the big time 5 stars. We like writing kids into depth charts. At least me, I do it all the time with these dudes that are just committed and not actually signed to football teams. I like doing it as a bit of just the exercise to kind of look at how a team's trending, but you can't really make it official until they actually sign, obviously. But of course, you got to make decisions based on who's committed. Anyways, we're going to actually start with Tyler Atkinson because he had committed first. A big fan of this kid. When we watch a lot of the linebackers in this class, the top talent, Xavier Griffin, I think you're kind of more excited about those dudes on the edge, or them kind of in different capacities than just off-ball linebacker. I think that's really the excitement of a lot of these other prospects. TJ White, highly rated off the top of my head. All of them are guys that they're all right off-ball linebackers. They're all right inside linebackers, but none of them are just pure run and hit. They're not pure, read the guards, read the backfield, and then get there. A lot of them are just very versatile, add a whole lot, maybe in pass coverage. The Ely that's committed to USC, that's kind of what you're getting with him, a bit more of that pass coverage skill set. But with Tyler Atkinson, you're getting just an inside linebacker to me. Off the top of my head, 6'2", 215, maybe even lighter, 210. You're going to ask him to put on 15 pounds, 20 pounds to really play that inside linebacker in the SEC level. But what he does athletically, everything's already there. And for a junior in high school, what do I like about him athletically? Very quick trigger. What does that mean? Very explosive, but sometimes you'll see these linebackers, they won't be as explosive when they're off ball versus when they're on the edge. It's a lot easier to time the snap or play defensive line when you're closer to the football, first of all, but you also don't really have to read when you're pass rushing. You're not really reading the backfield as much as you are when you're playing off ball, where you have to actually decide where to go. You have a bit of an idea where you're going. So the explosiveness shows up a lot for these kids. Xavier Griffin's guy that you see, so explosive off of the edge, but then they kind of move into an off-ball linebacker role, and it's not there anymore because they're kind of second-guessing. They have to read the guards. They have to read the backfield. Won't do a great job of kind of marrying their feet to their eyes or their head. And it's not because that they're not athletic. It's just more they don't have the understanding of football yet. But Tyler Atkinson, you're getting a kid already understands the game of football from what I can tell. It's just a highlight tape we watch on this channel, but you see how fast the reads happen. And even when he is wrong, he's so fast that it doesn't really matter. He still beats the kid there. There's a couple where you'll see I didn't think he took a great angle, and he still gets there just because of how athletic he is. Just a physical specimen, I think, physical and athletic specimen. What do I like about him for Texas specifically? I think I said he's going to be more of a will linebacker, and I just look at their depth chart right now, what they have, what they're going to have when Atkinson actually walks on campus. We're not going to be talking about, obviously, Anthony Hill, Brad Spence. Brad Spence might still be on the roster when Atkinson actually gets to Texas, but Anthony Hill is going to be the NFL. He's going to be in the NFL, in in 6 months or 7 months, whenever the draft is, a bit longer than that, 10 months. We're going to be talking about Anthony Hill in the NFL by then. So Tyler Atkinson, I don't think he plays that Anthony Hill role. I think that's exactly what Elijah Barnes is going to do for them at 240. And Elijah Barnes is one of my favorite prospects at linebacker in the 2025 cycle. 240 pounds, but ran a sub 11. And, every time I see that, I can't really believe that he ran a sub 1100 meters. So very excited for him at the mic role. I think Tyler Atkinson at a bit of a slighter stature. I don't have any issues about him putting on weight eventually, but I think he will have to till he actually sees the field. Not something you're worrying about with Elijah Barnes. So I kind of like Barnes. I said this in the little TikTok I did. I like him a bit more as that Mike linebacker. Another guy, really, really quick to read. Just two, I think, really intelligent linebackers, but also great athletes. And that's why they were ranked so high. I couldn't believe that Elijah Barnes, looking back at it, was something like the 5th rated linebacker. He's even better than that, in my opinion. Dallas, remember him from coming out of Dallas Skyline High School, I believe it was. Really like him kind of to be that in between the tackles linebacker that still has that speed to make plays on the boundary. But I really like Tyler Atkinson in that role a bit more, being the sideline to sideline linebacker. And you even see some flashes of him pass dropping. You see him off the edge a little bit. I don't think that's what he's going to do at the next level, but very excited for what Tyler Atkinson's bringing to this defense. I'm trying to think if there's any other points about this linebacker room. Very excited for Tyler Atkinson for sure. And this was a big get also. Somebody on one of the comments said something about that Georgia's been recruiting this kid for years, since he was in 8th grade. This is a big get. This kid, Georgia, I can tell you right now, just sometimes you'll watch these football players that commit and you'll be like, all right, that was the coach had a relationship. It's not a big loss if they don't bring him in. Atkinson was a guy Georgia, I can tell you right now, watching 3 seconds of the film, this was a guy Georgia wanted bad. And, this recruitment's not over by any means. And I'm not saying that to say he's going to flip from Texas, but it's not something that you can just feel comfortable about him for sure walking into Austin. Come January, if he enrolls earlier, whenever he ends up coming onto campus, it's going to be a battle going forward, but it's a big step for Texas. And to the same end, I think we're also going to be saying that about James Johnson, not a guy that the recruitment's over by any means. This was also a massive win for Texas over Georgia. He was committed to Georgia. And, if you would have asked me literally 5 minutes before James Johnson flipped, before I saw that James Johnson flipped to Texas, if you would have asked me to name 5 prospects in the country that you feel good about landing where they actually are in terms of fit, I would not. I would have put James Johnson on that list. I would, if you told me that he was going to flip to Texas later today, I would have told you smoke crack. What Georgia's done on the defensive line historically, and the way that they've recruited South Florida, the way that they've recruited really just the entire East Coast, really surprised that Coach Sarkisian and Kwiatkowski, I can't pronounce his last name, that they're able to pry this one away from Georgia. Another one, it's not done yet. There's going to be a whole lot going on. It's early, it's very early in these kids' recruitment. Not too early, but still, they're not actually committing until a bit later. But they're not signing until later. So James Johnson, the fact that he flipped from Georgia means a whole lot. We're just going to talk about them like they're going to end up at Texas. The point I was trying to make is that recruitment's still going on. What do I like about James Johnson? So explosive. When he committed to Georgia, I kind of saw him a bit in that the way they use their defensive linemen is they don't really see them as defensive tackles or defensive ends. They just see them as defensive linemen. And dudes like this, Georgia specifically did a really good job of putting them into good positions to win. But what is Texas getting? I think they're getting one of the most explosive defensive tackles. Don't have the weight listed, but he's 290 plus. Very explosive, very good first step. You see that on this film. So this is actually him at North Fort Myers, and he just transferred to Miami Northwestern. So when we watch the senior year film, you'll see him at Miami Northwestern. Very explosive, pass rush upside. That's what it is with me. Not a guy that's going to be a 2-gapper. He's certainly big enough to be very strong against the run, but if you want to compare him, if he's closer to Tavondre Sweat or Byron Murphy, he's a bit closer to Byron Murphy, but not at that extreme end of the spectrum. Not as good as a first step as Byron Murphy, but certainly a lot stronger, a lot bigger, more of a physical presence to Byron Murphy. So I think you're going to see him. What I would do, if I was a coordinator, if you give King Cole the defense, I'm never going to have athletes of like this, first of all, if I end up with a team, but this is a dude on first down. You put him on the edge, you let him set the edge. He's so friggin' strong, so long. I absolutely love him setting the edge, defending the run as a defensive end on first and second down. You know, those obvious rundowns. I absolutely love him there. Really as good as you get. And then when you start getting into those passing downs, then you move him into the interior defensive line. And then that's where you kind of start getting after the quarterback. And, he's going to be more explosive than 99% of guards he's going to face. So now looking at what Texas actually has on the defense, on the defensive line specifically, Alex January, absolutely love this kid. That's going to be more of your nose tackle, T'Vondre Sweat. I always bring up T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, not even when I'm talking about Texas, because it's the perfect example of like the two types of defensive tackles that exist. So anyways, Alex January, massive, 6'5", 320. I like him better than T'Vondre Sweat, just because Sweat was so. I'm sorry if I keep bringing these two names up, but Sweat was so massive, very good against the run. Just you would never expect that much out of the run from him. Alex January has legit pass rush upside for a nose tackle. I don't know if he's listed as a nose tackle on their depth chart right now, and I'm looking at it here. He's not even listed. I think that's a dude that you do play at nose tackle, but you might even see him on pass rush down. Anyways, that's down the line. They also have two guys younger than him that I want to say they're necessarily better, but Justice Terry, Myron Charles, bring both of these kids in. Justice Terry, yeah, similar skill set. I think that James Johnson's bringing is Justice Terry, bit undersized. Justice Terry is a 6'5", 260. You're gonna have to put on some weight, but really explosive. Another guy that's just a good defensive lineman, not necessarily a tackler or defensive end. Then you look at what they have on the edge. 2 more years of Colin Simmons, very exciting. As for when we're actually think we're going to see James Johnson, not sure you would see him on the field all that much in 2026, but we're going to talk about Lance Jackson. I think absolutely love this dude on the edge. That's kind of why you might not see James Johnson on the edge all that much, because you have some massive defensive linemen. Lance Jackson, one of them. Smith Orogbo, a bit more of a pass rusher than a 3-down defensive lineman, but similar deal with Zena. I can't say his last name, Muzelu. Anyways, I think that's all I wanted to really talk about. As for the actual recruiting and not the on-field stuff, just massive wins. These two 4-stars, I guess. Some websites have them as 5 stars, but I can tell you, like, watching them, Georgia wanted them really bad, and that should tell you something. And this is two top-tier talents in the country at their respective positions. Tyler Atkinson specifically, I think, is the best off-ball linebacker in the country. James Johnson, won't necessarily call him the best defensive lineman in the country, but I think he's for the type of defensive lineman he is, the type of defensive tackle he is, I think he's the premier in this 2026 class of those kind of smaller. I say smaller just because of how explosive he is, but at 290, 300, we have no issues about his size at all. Very excited for these two guys. Now, I've kind of said it a little bit before, but recruitment's not over by any means. These are two kids that Texas is going to have to continue to have the relationship, not only have the relationship, build with the relationship. Because I could tell you, as soon as Atkinson committed and then James Johnson flipped, Georgia's still in the mix, I'd say, for both of these guys. But enjoy it tonight for what it is. Very exciting.